they're potentially going to bring on the number one salesperson from their number one competitor. We end up doing the assessments. This person scored terrible for your role. And the reason they scored so low is because we needed someone that was a hunter. And the person that they were interviewing was more of a farmer. Horrible mistake. They needed to grow their business, not grow existing accounts.
And there are times where, someone who is in a role is not performing at their best, and we can run an assessment and see their prospecting score is not great, but their relationship building and having that client-facing long-term relationship is actually a very high score. Why don't we move them into a role where they can fester more of a relationship, instead of having to go and talk to people they don't know.
Welcome to Building Your Sales Engine. I'm your host, Mark McGraw.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Building Your Sales Engine. I'm here with one fabulous Mrs. Rachel Chang.
Hello.
Good to be with you.
It's great to be here.
A lot of folks don't know Rachel actually does the production of our podcast, so she makes sure the editing is all perfect. Yes. And while you don't do the editing, you work with all the team to make sure everything goes off. But that's not why you're here today. You are here because most people don't know you have a master's in industrial and organizational psychology.
Yes.
I mean, a specialty in learning and development. So you are working at the right spot.
Yes, definitely. I was very lucky to get this role.
And we were too. We were too. And you've been with us for a couple of years, and you actually run, in addition to the podcast stuff that we do, your main job is around assessments.
Yes.
And helping people evaluate salespeople. And that's what we're going to spend time talking about together today.
Yes, definitely. And it's funny because I feel like I was hired as an operations manager. And then during our interview, I told you what my passion was, which was assessments. And we were able to phase that into my job, and it's my favorite part of my job.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And you do a great job of it. I've seen you run assessments with people and doing the reviews, and you just do a phenomenal job of interacting with people around that. And so it's fun to watch. It's fun to watch people do what they love to do. I just get a good kick out of that.
Definitely.
So I tell you what, for folks, if they're diving in or they're thinking about, imagine we have either a salesperson or a sales leader, and they're thinking about using assessments to evaluate their team or maybe a new hire. Let's just start here. What are assessments? What are the types of assessments for somebody who's just getting into the world so they have a frame of reference for what assessments are and how they help sales managers?
Definitely. So mainly the ones that we work with are work style assessments, personality assessments, sales capacity, and abstract reasoning. And we kind of like to apply one for whatever they want, or we do a smattering of, 2 or 3 to kind of cover whatever they need. Work style is mainly how their personality and communication preferences are in the workspace specifically, and then how they adjust in uncomfortable or stressful situations.
This would be like a DISC assessment.
Yes, definitely. And we love DISC. It's great. I'm a big fan of it. And then we also have sales capacity or personality and abstract reasoning, and that kind of takes the overall theme of DISC, but dives a little bit deeper into key motivators and what they are naturally good at, what they get energy from, what takes energy from them, and all things like that.
So if we started, and we had Marku from Extended Disc on the podcast at one time, and great, by the way, it was a wonderful. He gave some great insight in dealing with difficult situations and such.
Yeah.
But if we just start with like a DISC assessment, let's just talk about that for a minute and what it does and how a sales manager or salesperson could use that type of an assessment to be better at their craft. Let's go with that one first.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that our office knows all about DISC. We use it within our team, and you as our manager apply it very well. So it kind of takes your work style, and it's kind of your personality in the workplace, and there are 4 different styles. And it kind of tells you whether you're a little bit more extroverted or introverted, whether you'd like to base your conversations more on tasks or people. And we are able to use that as a team to know how each person likes to communicate. So for example, Nicole is a very high I, and I'm actually a very high C. And those are complete polar opposites on the DISC profile, but we actually are able to get along so well as team members because we know how to adjust to each other. You are actually a combination IC, and so you're able to kind of throw in a lot of different ways that you speak to people. And it's kind of knowing to adjust on whether you have a little bit more energy, like higher volume or excitement or, louder and talk faster, or if you know that you want to keep the conversation brief, this is what we need to have done, or how was your weekend? Like, how's the weather been? Like, what's going on? I think applying those things kind of helps people feel a little bit more comfortable, and then just knowing how to adjust, stay true to your normal self, but also just getting along with others.
So like a salesperson, if they go in to a meeting with somebody, they might start to recognize some cues that tell that salesperson what type of personality they're dealing with. And they might ramp up certain things, maybe their energy, or ramp down their energy, or ramp up their level of detail if the person needs more detail, or ramp that down and stay big picture. And some people I have found just do this naturally. And if you ask them to explain what they're doing, they really struggle with it. But what DISC allows, and the assessment of DISC allows someone to have a framework then to be able to have how I'm going to change and how I'm going to adapt. And so I found that to be very helpful. I've heard that from a lot of people, that it gives them a framework for how do they communicate with others.
Definitely. And that's actually something that I go over a lot with salespeople in my debrief calls with them is the assessments can look like a lot. And they're like, well, I don't really know how to apply this. How do I adjust? It's like too much information. And if you kind of look at the axes for DISC, there's energy and then there's what you focus on. And I'm like, honestly, I just enter a call and I say, hi. And then some people come in and they're like, hey, like, how are you? Like, how was your weekend? What are your plans? Like all these things. And immediately I know, okay, higher energy and higher people focus. Or they say, okay, like I only have like 15 minutes. Like I don't really want to have to be on this call for 30 minutes. Can we just make it really quick? And I'm like, okay, higher energy, but let's just get the task done. And I'll just immediately know it's those two things that you have to change really. And it's not as much when you consider just energy and what you talk about.
It keeps it really simple that way. And that is one thing I love about the DISC assessments as a tool, because it does give you a chance to very simply apply something in the real world.
So mainly the ones that we work with are work style assessments, personality assessments, sales capacity, and abstract reasoning.
I always give you credit and laugh in a good way, is that you're being a more C personality. That stands for compliant, which means you're maybe a little bit more rules focused and a little bit more introverted on that side. Just because that person is that way doesn't mean that they can't shift. And I've seen you, when you go into assessments, you just take on a different personality almost and match up to the person that you're interacting with. And it's fun to watch that. And it's a great example of how someone can shift and change given circumstances.
Yes, definitely. And I think it gives my adjusted styles an S, which is definitely a lot more friendly and pleasant to get along with than my typical when I'm in my office with the door shut and I'm just hunkered down doing my thing. But it's also like when you look at DISC, everyone has every style within them. And you actually taught me this analogy is that your personality is kind of like the surface of an ocean, and all the styles are within this iceberg, and some things are below the surface. You can't really see it, but some things are on the tip of the iceberg and are very prominent in what you show to other people. And that's kind of what I tell them. Like some people, they come off as an I, but they do have a D style in them, and it can pull out when it needs to come out.
And so from a coaching point of view, as a manager, you can coach up someone differently based upon their styles. And these are how assessments, particularly on the DISC style, helps us be able to adjust whether we're selling or whether we're managing. I know I've had employees that have worked with me and team members that have worked with me that are very high D, and I need to, when I make a recommendation or some coaching, I need to be very strong with them because otherwise it doesn't get through their head.
Yes.
And other people, if I were equally that strong with them, they would be a puddle on the floor,
definitely.
which isn't good either. So, it's wonderful in that sense that it really helps us do a better job of coaching.
Yeah, it's definitely like what motivates someone to come out of their shell and have the passion come out of them, especially in the workplace, is, if I talk to Nicole how I prefer to be talked to, which is very like, this is what I need done, just get it done. Nicole would be like, I think she's mad at me. Like now I'm like going to sit in my office and be nervous. And it's just I styles, just their goal is, have people like them. They love people. D styles, they just want to win. And so when I talk to Nicole, I make sure I add in a little bit more exclamation marks. I try to ask her how her day is. I kind of like let that feed into our conversation. And that way I know she leaves the conversation happy, but also we know what needs to be done and she leaves motivated too.
And Rachel, I think these are great examples of how you practically apply things that are assessments. And by the way, we should probably also say assessments, usually these are online assessments that people take. Mm-hmm. They answer questions. None of the questions are typically fun questions to answer. They're usually a little bit challenging. And they take anywhere from 10 minutes up to maybe 35, 40 minutes on the other end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
And you get reports back that tell you about yourself. And those are DISC assessments on the personality side. Mm-hmm. And then we have other assessments as well that people use for evaluating whether we should hire someone. Well, why don't you walk through, what about the other assessments that are used to evaluate salespeople and to help them be better?
Yeah, definitely. So the other few assessments that we have are a little bit more in depth, and they are actually true personality assessments. So they go into in depth of what are key motivators, what are certain traits and capabilities, competencies that they have, such as composure and resiliency, negotiating, relationship building, active listening, all kind of specifics like that. Or they do sales capacity, where it shows how good they are at negotiating, prospecting, and then specific behaviors that fall under those. So those are just a little bit digging under the surface.
And how would someone go about using those? Let's say a sales manager is using assessments. What are the different methods or applications that they would use an assessment for?
Yeah, definitely. So there's a lot. One of the main things is hiring. So if they're looking for a new person in a new business development role, then that's what we can run the assessment against. And they have certain competencies that they want. So specifically in new business development, they want someone who's really good at prospecting and, starting new conversations. And that's what we can see if they have a natural ability for that. And the assessments show natural ability as opposed to, sometimes they don't show if they're specifically good at it. So one of them shows if it gives them energy, if they can do it for a long amount of time, if they just have this, keep saying natural, but it's just a natural, streamlined way of getting to that point. And the other assessments show both natural capabilities, but also if they have learned this behavior and have become good at it, and comparing what potential they could have with a right manager and things like that.
So an assessment really gives you an indicator of how someone might develop into a role as opposed to what their experience is.
Yes.
Interviews are great for looking at experience. Assessments a lot of times can show you natural tendencies as well as the capacity to do a job.
Right. Correct. And so, one of our assessments that shows the natural capabilities, they could have a very high score in prospecting, and then the manager will be like, great, let's hire them. But then when they come on board, maybe they're not showing that great score. They're not the best prospecting person, but it shows that they have potential, and with the right coaching, they can get there as long as they have the right motivation factors.
That's a great way of looking at it. I can't help but think of a story that I had with a client who was interviewing their number one competitor salesperson. So it was a salesperson for their number one competitor.
Wow.
And they were looking to bring them in. Now, this company was probably number 4 in the marketplace, so they weren't number one brand name. And they're potentially going to bring on the number one salesperson from their number one competitor. So imagine. We end up doing the assessments at one point, and I call the guy up. I'm like, this person scored terrible for your role, and we were scratching our heads. So the reason they scored so low and why this is so important is they scored low because we needed someone that was a hunter in the role. And the person that they were interviewing actually was more of a farmer.
Yeah.
So they were the number one person, but they had actually already built up a base. They had inherited some accounts. They were managing accounts as opposed to finding and growing accounts. Had they hired that person, horrible mistake. Because they needed to grow their business, not grow existing accounts.
Yeah, definitely.
And so anyway, assessments to me help you so much in that to be able to see what people's natural tendencies are.
Yeah, for sure. And there are times where, someone who is in a role is not performing at their best and the managers have been like, I don't know, I don't think that they're right. And we can run an assessment and see like, okay, they are in a new business development role and their prospecting score is not great, but their relationship building and having that client facing long-term relationship is actually a very high score and they're so natural at it. So then why don't we move them into a role where they can not be a hunter or cold caller or anything, but why don't they just sit in a role where they can fester more of a relationship, instead of having to go and talk to people they don't know.
Yeah, and that's exactly what ends up happening there. And so that's getting the expression that's been used for a million years is getting the right people in the right seats of the bus, and that's really what that is. And you will find people that are naturally good at certain things. And I tell you, one place that we've seen a ton is you get someone who comes from an engineering background or a technical background, and you wouldn't necessarily look at that person as having sales skills, but assessments can identify, hey, here's somebody that's kind of a diamond in the rough that could be a great seller that's from the service world or from the technical world.
Definitely, yeah. An expert in their field too.
Yeah, and that's the best of all worlds. They're a technical expert, and at the same time, they can sell. They can learn to sell. They have the capacity or the capability of learning how to sell.
Definitely, yeah.
So use cases we have hiring for one. You've got evaluation of maybe an individual on a team to make sure that they are in the right role, the right position. You can use assessments for an entire team as well. So tell us a little bit about how you might use them there.
Yeah, definitely. So a couple different use cases, but we can take, 30 people, 100 people, run them against a team assessment and see different factors of how they are in communication style. Maybe they're all different communication styles. Maybe they all fall in the same one. Where the team could be lacking in certain competencies. So maybe a lot of the team is really great at negotiating, but their relationship skills across the board are a little bit low. Or maybe there's one person who really stands out. And you can apply that to either hire more people to fill in those gaps or start coaching people towards learning how to do relationship building. Because even though sometimes it shows the natural score, if you're doing the same thing for years and years, it becomes so natural to you. So when we start coaching people on something that might have a lower natural score, they can start building up that score in the long-term run too.
And you do see groups of people that have like a propensity for one thing or another. And you use the example of negotiating versus relationships. And this is one that we see a lot. And that is you'll see a team and the team is very, very high in relationships, but very low in negotiating. Well, I mean, if you're very high in relationships, you want people to like you want them to like you, you're not going to negotiate.
Right. Yes, definitely.
And so that indicates like here's training opportunity that if this team gets stronger at this skill and we can teach them to separate the relationship from the role, now you can start to elevate an entire team. And so it can be great for training on that side.
And that's, I feel like, the best way that we use it at Sandler, and that's why it's such an advantage to have assessments alongside the sales training. So if we see that the team has really low composure and resiliency scores and the manager can see that and knew it, like when they see the low score, they're like, yeah, obviously whenever they take a hit, they are just out for a week because their confidence has like completely sunk. But then that's why at Sandler we'll know, okay, let's tailor our training to help them with like IR theory. Let's let them know that this failure does not define them, that there's a way to bounce back. Like everything. That doesn't mean you're a bad salesperson. It happens to everybody. And kind of knowing how to tailor what we do in our training to fit their needs.
That's perfectly said. And it does help tremendously like that. And that is one of my all-time favorite topics, which is IR theory.
Me too.
It is,
It's
it
so
is
good.
awesome. And if you don't know, IR theory stands for identity and role. And for our listeners, we are not in the sum of our roles, and so that helps salespeople begin to separate rejection that they have in what they do, so that they don't take that and carry it over and feel like it's a reflection personally. So
Yeah, definitely.
there's things then that can be taught based upon the results of the assessments. When you look at assessments, I mean, there's behaviors and competencies and all these fancy words that describe the characteristics of someone. What are some of the most important characteristics and behaviors that exist for salespeople for them to be successful? Are there a couple that jump out at you that you've seen?
I would say active listening is one, especially in terms of being able to do questioning, reversing, understanding what pain points are. I think that can cover a lot of different aspects in sales. Also composure and resiliency, because as a salesperson, you're going to get rejections. You're going to have people say no. People are going to shut you down. And not having that completely hinder any progress that you have or anything that motivates you is going to be a big one. And I think just in general, as a person, learning to be a little resilient in the workspace helps a lot.
Those are good ones.
Yeah, I feel like those are ones that I really definitely look out for. And then there's a lot of different ones that can fall under different roles as well.
And by the way, anybody wanting to get better at active listening and reflective listening, the show that we did with Matt Detchen around that was excellent. He had some great ideas around there. And so people could pop over and listen to that with Matt Detchen. I have seen, on my side of things, I've seen the characteristic ambition and drive. And so all of those things around motivation and drive. I heard... it was Tony Robbins on a podcast recently, and he was asked, what's the number one characteristic that he's seen in successful entrepreneurs and business owners? And he said, I'd love to tell you that it's intelligence, but it's not. He said it's hunger. And I think there's a lot of truth to that is, if you can identify, and that's hard to get necessarily out of an interview, although you can.
Yeah.
But identifying somebody's passion and drive and their hunger to be, to want more and to be the best they can be. Great motivator.
Definitely. I completely agree. And that is a great point because I think a lot of people, hire for the smartest or the most, they do assessments that have abstract reasoning. Oh, they scored great. They're a really, really smart person. Awesome.
Yeah.
But in my opinion, there's different types of intelligences. Some people can be, book smart. They're really great at seeing how things are built. But it's hard to find people that love just working and have that hunger for business and, finding sales and things like that. And although you can assess for what can motivate somebody, it's hard to have that natural tendency of looking for more. Some people don't really want to keep working. Sometimes they want to just be at home, and just relax. But I mean, I know that you have this really great natural personality of you love working and you love what you do. And that's because you're in the right role, but that's one thing. But you also just have the personality of you love learning. That's another thing too, is loving to learn, but you have a passion for working and just working on your business as well.
I do have a lot of fun with that.
It's your hobby, honestly.
It's my hobby. I come in every morning with every Monday morning with what did I learn this weekend that we want to go roll out to everybody. I think to your point about personalities and the like. One of the things that assessments to me have helped is that a lot of times in an interview, when used for hiring, the candidate can be very friendly and very likable, and that we want to hire them because they're likable. And sometimes those characteristics, they don't help us get business closed and all of the above. And so I think assessments can point out those types of maybe flaws where we as a manager might be deceived in hiring somebody and hire somebody that's very likable, but maybe not as effective as they could be.
100%. Like I have one client that I work with a lot for hiring, and she loves the assessments because, you know, she has interviews with people and she's like, yeah, they were great. I would say that they were an I and it'd be perfect for this role. And we run a couple assessments on them and find out that their adjusted style is an I, and that's what they're pulling out, but it's not what they are naturally. And it's just a complete eye-opener to, you know, they are kind of sometimes putting on a little bit of a mask, whether they know it or not, and it's not particularly a bad thing. Like I definitely put on a mask when I'm around new people too. It's just how I adjust. But if you want a worker to be a certain style, it has to be what is natural to them. They can't keep up that mask, 40 hours a week.
It's tough. It's tough. The longer someone's out of their natural style in a given day, it just creates stress and anxiety and all, and it's hard for people to adapt all day long to a different style.
Definitely. And like, DISC has the natural style and the adjusted style, and I always tell people if your natural and adjusted are very close together on that assessments page, it's like a centimeter apart, that's great. You're a lot closer. You don't feel like you need to adjust yourself so much. Or if it is a complete 3 inches across the page, that's like a rubber band. And the further you have to stretch yourself to be not your natural self, then you're a lot more prone to burnout because you can't sustain something that is not like you for a long period of time. That's me. If I'm at a conference and I have to feel like I am completely out of my shell, I can do it, but I can do it for 2 hours before I have to go lay down for 3 hours or something.
Time for a nap.
Yeah.
I get it. I totally understand. People have a different amount of energy that they can expend when they're around other people. Some people are charged up by it. Other people, their battery depletes a bit and they got to go charge back up in the hotel room.
Yes.
And the like. And so knowing who we are helps us be able to adapt to others, and it helps us be able to coach others. And to me, that's been one of the best things about using assessments for sales teams to go help managers coach better and help select the right salespeople and then optimize the team. So all great uses.
Yeah, definitely.
Any final thoughts that you'd have for somebody that was thinking about putting some assessments into their sales team?
I do it. I love it.
Good answer.
And then use Sandler training to help with it.
All right.
But also just know how to use it to adjust to others. That's the biggest part of my
Lots
opinion.
of different applications. And I love the shameless plug at the end. That is unlike Rachel Chang, but at the same time, well played.
Thank you.
Well played. Well, hey, thanks for being on the podcast with us, and really great insight in terms of how do you use assessments, applications. We will shamelessly just throw out, if anybody is thinking about having them done with their team, reach out to us at salesengine@sandler.com, and we'll be more than happy to walk you through the right one and how to go use it to go grow your sales engine. How about
Definitely,
that?
Yeah.
Excellent. Thanks for being on the show, Rachel.
Of course. Thanks for having me.